turn it up, it's your new groove, yeah. Riding waves in the digital blue, yeah. CTO time's got that insight, yeah. For the execs in the tech light, yeah. Bridging gaps with every tune, play it. Sync your mind to the tech boom, slay it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bytes of Brilliance, Boardroom Insights. I'm your host, Carsten Kraus, and today we have the pleasure to have somebody as a guest that is at the forefront of technological innovation and organizational transformation. Joining us today is Doug Berry, the Chief Technology Officer at TechMetrix and also former CTO at Tata Consulting. So Doug, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a while.
Thanks, Carsten. Yes, I look forward to this evening. Very excited.
Great. Well, Doug, you had an impressive career trajectory leading advancements. Some of the world's leading companies, including at Keurig Dr. Pepper, where I also was the chief data officer at the time. So, we know each other. And could you share with our listeners a bit about your professional journey and what led you to specialize in enterprise architecture and supply chain transformation?
Well, my journey in IT began early in the 80s. I finished university in 1980, at least my undergraduate degree, and I started working as a chemical engineer, and the PC was introduced in about 1982, I think. And of course, going through engineering school, we actually started with slide rules my freshman year, and then calculators were out my sophomore, junior year, and PC was out a couple years later. I just started writing software and creating a plant database. I was working in a refinery as a chemical engineer and a plant historian and process controls and just simulation, sizing equipment and so forth. And I joined a company 5 years after that, Digital Equipment Corporation, who at that time was a very successful company. Many of the world's IT applications that we know today were originally deployed on the VAX computers, like email and relational databases. Of course, IBM was there and a few others, but DEC was there with spreadsheets, all these things. So it just grabbed my interest, and I started just learning more and more. I learned MRP and started consulting, implementing ERP systems, actually MRP back then.
Mm-hmm.
That got me started in IT, and then you just want to grow. We're organisms like any other organism in biology. We are programmed to grow. So I grew in the consulting industry. I did well in several practices, capturing clients, and you just change with the times because technology is far advanced from those original PCs, and corporations need to leverage that technology to compete. And so I grew and was able to add value, thought propositions, add value to customer business cases, and now it's data.
Right.
So that's really sparked my interest in becoming a CTO.
Mm-hmm.
Data and architecture. So just see how difficult it has been in the marketplace for consultants. Meeting the businesses, how difficult it has been for them to adapt their landscapes to new technology. So that's my interest, solving problems.
Right. That's certainly quite a journey. And as technologists, we have to keep up with the times even more so as, folks in business departments, even though I think nowadays everybody has to be like a technologist. Your experiences in your personal life and the sheer acceleration of innovation that's coming towards us, I think it's really tough for companies to keep up with, all the way to all the advances in AI and like you mentioned, data is the foundation for everything, right? So with that being said, enterprise architecture obviously has evolved over the past decades. In your view, how crucial is it for organizations to modernize their enterprise architecture, and what are some of the key benefits that they can reap?
Well, large corporations, we tend to think that have been around forever. There are a few that have survived more than 50 years, but many don't. And it's, those that don't survive, I've read a lot of case studies. They just don't adapt their technology, their systems, their platforms, their ecosystems to the new business need. So it's crucial that they adapt. I mean, if you take a simple thing like upgrade my software, that's no easy task in many organizations. And if you talk about SAP moving from an older version of ERP, SAP ERP onto S/4HANA, and looking at it as a global platform, it's very challenging to make that transformation. There's so many things more than just technology that are involved. People are involved, their ability to learn and adapt, their ability to innovate, and their ability to manage projects to get work done on time. Key opportunity sets in many organizations to learn.
That's very true. A lot is about people. A lot is about the business objectives, about the strategy of an organization. So even we both are enterprise architecture practitioners, right? And so it's so important to not start with the technology and to understand the business vision, understand the synergies, and then apply change management best practices, right? Because so many times, you've probably seen that before, where you put something in place and it's great, you think it's great, and then you, as consultants, will leave the organization, and unfortunately, if it doesn't become part of the corporate DNA, it ends up being that you might go back to your old processes or implement the old processes in your brand new shiny solution, right? So that's something that obviously we want to avoid. Do you have some additional insights on that, on how we can overcome any barriers that companies might face when they try to upgrade their enterprise architectures?
Well, I mean, if you look at the MRP, for example, in the 1970s, it came to fruition. I mean, there were some early 50s and 60s systems. It was called Little MRP, and it was basically you had some procurement and you had some inventory connected, and then over time it became MRP, where you had more functional processes embedded in the software. Now we have, and the ERP was coined, I think, with ECC 4.7, something like that. I think it was the Gartner Group who coined the term ERP. And so these systems are changing. Now you have S4 with SOA. SOA has been out quite some time now. It enabled business partners to grab into the network, and suppliers and customers and so forth. So this whole transformation of software and technology, if you can't adopt that into your process, you're just not surviving. So you have to have mechanisms to understand the change, and mechanisms to look at the strategy in terms of a multi-year strategy, not an annual budget, but a multi-year strategy, set of programs that get identified, and then the ability to manage the gap between the current future state. So if I have a strategy now that I'm implementing, that strategy is something about the future. So I have a current future state. Now, my future state, my needed future state is changing as we speak. So there's always a gap between where you're going to end up in the future and where you actually need to be. So you need a lot of thinking about that, a lot of business case, a lot of skill, a lot of support from suppliers, from customers, from consultants. You need to leverage that whole ecosystem into a large corporation. Make those changes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It reminded me of a quote from the famous ice hockey player Wayne Gretzky, when he said, "You don't go where the puck is, but you have to go where the puck is going," right? And so I think that's you got to evolve over time. And you mentioned supply chain and integration with suppliers. I know that the supply chain landscape has been under a lot of pressure. In some of the roles that I did in the past, we were quite disrupted by supply chain or help companies when I was a CIO at a supply chain third-party logistics provider. And so it's so important to have a strong supply chain, understanding where your suppliers are, and then also really looking beyond the borders of your organization, right? And in transforming businesses. So, what are some techniques that you've seen as being successful to help modernize your transformation, leverage your supply chain?
In the supply chain. Well, in the last 10 years, I was with Tata Consultancy, and so I'm kind of like partially retired right now. I'm still working every day, doing work. But in those 10 years, I had hands-on in some way or another with 126 companies, and they're manufacturing companies. And of course, the manufacturing company got a supply chain. And software that they've implemented, they have customized it typically to their thinking as to how they want to run their supply chain. So challenges remain to modernize those systems. But supply chain is integral, and I am amazed actually. And I've been in IT for 40 years. I am amazed with what AI can. Now, I was on a call with some people 2 years ago in a conference call with Google and Apple, and we had about 50 companies. And a couple of days before that, ChatGPT was introduced. So I think it's around 2021, I believe. And I said to the guy at Google, I said, what are you guys going to do? This is going to be transformative. A lot of people aren't bothered by the fact that there's something right there in front of them that's going to knock them out of their current position, their current role, and they roll with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes don't even know that they're rolling with it, but they're rolling with it. You got to get in front of these things. And I'm amazed at the capability of AI. I'm writing a spreadsheet right now in Excel for project management. And so I want a full forward and backward view of the project plan so that I can get a critical path calculated with all the costs and budgets and embed in some statistics and things for probability of success.
Yeah.
I'm using AI to help me write some of these formulas that go into Excel, and they are like a paragraph long, some of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're working.
Yeah.
I'm capturing across multiple columns. So this is going to go into my supply chain work that I'm putting into a book and on my website. I'll put up the project plan. I'll just give it to people, let them have it. But embedding AI in the supply chain is just an obvious thing. How easy it is to do is not as obvious. You have to have people who are visionary leaders, who can lead, who can motivate individuals, who can capture budgets, build business cases, get their hands dirty a little bit, and basically gain results. You have to have that in place. Yeah, to make a transformation in the supply chain.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially where artificial intelligence and human intelligence can achieve so much more together, right? It's something that a little bit of a term that I established, which is HI plus AI is ECI, elevated collaborative, right? And I think that's something that companies are starting to realize today, that you can leverage AI. It will not replace people necessarily, but it enhances you, gives you a superpower to do your job even better, and have your AI assistant that gives you that additional insight and makes you a better leader, a better expert at what you're doing, right? And so totally important.
Well, it'll let you minimize cost or maximize speed to the target source. You can calculate that.
Right.
But again, I'm an engineer. I started out in engineering, and I got interested in IT because I could put engineering processes to play in software. It's math.
Mhm.
And the AI is more math, and it's been done by someone else, and it appears to be working. So we just need to take those tools and use them.
Right.
There's myriad of business cases in the supply chain for AI, for
Mhm.
blockchain, of course, for a
Yeah.
bunch of technologies. Yeah.
And it's not even in supply chain, it's and cybersecurity and other spaces, AI already, quite frankly, has been used already.
Automating large data centers. Yeah, when to shut a disk down, when to clean
Right.
it up,
Right.
monitoring potential fault tolerances.
Yeah.
And interesting, I got a call a few weeks ago about someone on LinkedIn basically wanted me to come and work on that CrowdStrike, that
Mhm.
failure
Yeah.
that happened with Microsoft. It shut down a bunch of servers globally.
Yeah.
So maybe there's no IT in there. Who knows? Or no AI. Maybe there
Yeah.
should have been. Somebody did that.
Right. The human factor is still the weakest link, unfortunately, but that's something that will always be the case. And in the end, on a positive note, it's good that you have human in the loop with AI systems where you can always provide feedback. Not in the CrowdStrike case. I think that was
Well,
a bad decision.
we used to write AI. We called it AI. It was just a bunch of if, then, else, if statements. And it
Right.
was done in Pascal.
Right.
And we could see the rules. And I actually believe ABAP, the ABAP code in SAP still has thousands and thousands of rules written like that.
Yeah.
Particularly around SD, sales and order, sales to the order to cash process.
Yeah.
And pricing and so forth, just to run their back-end systems in SAP. When how do you configure SAP across all these different industries, all these different businesses and so forth? Thousands of rules.
It's a lot of work that went into it, but in the end, it works, right? To your point.
And it works. It's not. It's
Yeah.
the amazing thing is conversation.
Mhm.
It's like I'm getting up here in the morning, I'm working and I'm talking, I'm interacting, but it's with this AI tool.
Right.
It's with anybody right now. I'm so
Yeah.
busy. But
That's good. That's the welcome to the new brave new world, right? So you're also, I guess that's maybe a good leeway into like a term that you're, I think, a little bit known for. You're advocating for in organizations to be ambidextrous. I had to look that term up and see what does that mean. So could you maybe explain what it means for businesses and how can they be ambidextrous?
well, the nut of it is that you have to have people focused on innovation and people focused on running the business. Now, if you're
Mm.
running the business, you're going to innovate, you're going to solve problems, and you're going to innovate. But you have to have a commitment toward innovation. You have to have people who are scanning the technology marketplace, the Silicon Valley, Middle East, Europe, where all these software development centers are, all these highly skilled individuals, scanning them, looking at technology, how it can be adapted. Ambidextrous means I can do both those things at the same time. I can
Mhm.
run my business well and solve problems, but I can also innovate at the same time. And these two organizations can come together and deliver, more effective results than if they were not focused on innovation and only singularly getting the cost down,
Yeah.
solving the customer order problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's an ambidextrous organization. And it is key because, Intel said the other day on YouTube that as soon as they introduce a piece of technology, it's good for 3 weeks. And somebody's leapfrogged it.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't looked at that in a while, but it used to be, 18 months, 2 years. You introduce a laptop or a new PC in the marketplace, pretty good technology for 2 years. You wouldn't have a lot of competitors. It's 3 weeks now, is what I'm understanding.
Wow.
So critical to understand this.
That's amazing. The one thing that I was thinking about when you explained ambidextrous was I studied disruptive innovation from Clay Christensen, the great Clay Christensen. He's unfortunately passed away, but a great leader about disruptive, explaining how there's different types of innovation. And I think it's best. So you have companies that do incremental innovation, which is pretty normal, right? Or you have new entrants that copy and do it lower cost. But then really where the magic is, and I had my previous guest on, Brian Evergreen, who was talking about future solving organizations that look at North Star, where you want to be, and you look at how can you do it. And Clay Christensen mentioned that you're in some cases, like you have this disruptive innovation, you need to look outside of what you're currently doing and innovate and talk to prospects, talk to customers, spend a day in the life of. An example was somebody went into that fast food chain and understood that the purpose of what the job to be done for the customer was not to go and have a full meal, but they got milkshakes that entertained them for a long time during their commute to work. So that's something that you wouldn't necessarily understand unless you talk to your customers. And then the other part was that when you have organizations, and like larger organizations, that could be also mid-sized, right, where you have an existing product and you have a new idea and you want to do something, but it doesn't fit into your current processes. So, and the current sales process, the current organizational, how do you support? What's the pricing model? What's the go-to-market strategy? And for these disruptive businesses, it might make sense to actually spin off your company because it's so different. We can still provide some basic support, but it's very different, right? And sometimes that might be the ambidextrous model to spin it off, and sometimes you can do it within your organization. But I think it's fascinating.
Not all technology is disruptive, but still need to be adopted, still need to plan and adopt it and use it. But without understanding what disruption is, you're going to get disrupted. If you don't follow and understand, the S curve, where products are innovated and then they're highly adopted and then they phase out over time. That has to be understood, I think. In each organization, so going to be a little bit different so that they don't get disrupted.
Right.
So there's a lot of businesses now getting disrupted. I think in the automotive industry and in the food industry. I think in the software industry, there's going to be disruption in the software industry just due to AI for that.
Yeah. I think one thing that I know one of the areas that you focus on is ERP transformation, right? And so I see a lot of disruption in that space too, where I think SAP started with that, with their kind of their building out their digital core and then having ancillary systems where you can kind of plug and play, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be an SAP system, but they're understanding that, hey, companies have other systems that they need to integrate with. So what do you see happening in the industry? Do you see composable ERP systems that are where you have core capability and then orchestration of different software?
Well, I didn't go to Sapphire this year, but I did listen to probably 8 or 10 of the videos out of what was published, and it was all about the clean core. And so why would SAP have this strategy just now? I think they've realized how hard it is for their customers to manage their systems in light of all the new technology that's coming, and that's available today. So how does a global supply chain manufacturer leverage S/4HANA and the latest applications? What have they done over the years? Well, they've modified the code. They put in their own processes. They've got problems with data. They've got, some of them, 1,000 applications that need to be interfaced in one way or another into the system. And it all goes back to SAP. Hey, you're my core background, my core backbone, and it's too hard. So they've got a decent strategy. I think that's a very good strategy. Don't modify the code. If you do want something unique, you do it outside our engine and you interface it.
Right.
So that helps. But if you're like Kraft Foods, you've got multiple ERP systems globally.
Right.
And you got 3 ERP systems, 3 BW systems on each of different versions. So they're a long way away from getting to a clean core, but the business case is there, and they're to adopt. They're going to have these systems come into place.
Right.
It's time. It's time that someone in the marketplace create a new ERP system as complex and as big. Well, I don't want to say as complex, but something comparable to SAP. Where might that come from? I would say it's going to come from India. If it's going to come from anywhere, it's going to come from India.
Mhm.
And you got to have a new ERP system that is more flexible, more adoptable, more transformative.
Mhm.
That case is there. If I had $100 million, might write some software.
All right, let's do it. I might as well use some AI to empower it with that. That's where probably the next generation of ERP is going to be a lot of AI capabilities built in it and enabling ease of integration with other systems. So, but yeah, that definitely sounds interesting. So from a technology transformation, where do you see enterprise architecture going and supporting this transformation? What are some best practices that you would recommend?
Well, there's a ton of things there into that question, a ton of response. You can look at the architecture as, the data center, and is going to the cloud. Has that been the right thing to do, or should I have remained on-prem? There's going to be a combination of those things. The right architecture is an architecture that we can close the gap between our current target state and our desired state. We have to be able to integrate into new applications, new functionality that it's not in the core backbone. It's not in the core ERP system. That architecture, you're talking about global companies here. So it has to be operated in an efficient way. It has to be automated. The operations in the data center have to be automated so that it doesn't fail, and it can be taken down and brought back up. The applications have to have clean data. So there's a data architecture that is key. And, without data, you got no AI. So there's no sense. So we need tons and tons of data. We need billions and billions of records. These chat GDP guys, Elon Musk and these other guys, somehow they learned how to read all the data from the internet into their AI system. I mean, that's trillions of data points. But that tool gives them the ability to do a myriad of things. So that right architecture, you have to have the data. You have to be able to operate the operating system. You have to be able to modify your ERP system one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a hard question to answer, actually. There's just so many things involved.
Yeah, but I think
how many things do you need to run your architecture? I mean, I had a client about 3 years ago, and they had Accenture, they had TCS, they had IBM, they had 3 or 4 niche players. They had a total of 7 different firms just operating their data center.
Wow.
And what they were was a trade promotion management company who executed trades for their clients, which were the food companies. And they would settle the trade. And so it's key for them, that the customer, so they're trading for Kraft. Kraft's customers are Walmart and these others. They're giving these discounts. And so they got to plan the discounts. They got to execute the discounts, different kinds of promotions. So 7 different vendors running these applications. So that's, to me, inefficient. So we need some efficiency built into the architecture to not have to have so many different companies that you've got to interface with one another to get things to work.
Right. Yeah, like I can see that being at some stage a finger pointing exercise if something goes wrong. If you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it's
Well,
not
they call
never a
yeah,
good thing.
they'll say, well, it's the other guy.
Yeah, right. And then the other part is too that it's so true. We have all these companies that are doing AI pilots right now, and everything is based on Excel spreadsheets. And then once you realize you have to actually integrate with your systems, it's a whole different story. So it's so important to first start with your data strategy, get your ducks in a row there, and then build on top of that, right? And at least to understand that that is what's necessary for any data project, and then AI project in the end is a data project with a nice user interface that gives you,
We don't want to lose track of blockchain either. I mean, blockchain is transformative in the supply chain. Smart contracts,
true, yeah,
peer-to-peer computing. You don't need this central clearinghouse that we have in the world right now.
Mhm.
Blockchain just might take off. If we get a decent government in the US, then who will, there's a lot of ways to define it as decent, but for me,
Yeah.
it's like one thing I want is blockchain and crypto.
right,
I want a plan out of the government. What are they going to do?
right,
Just highly regulated, nobody can play, or open it up? Let's do
Right.
something.
right.
It's transformative.
Yeah, I think it's come a long way. I've been experimenting with blockchain for supply chain capabilities, but I think it's now being used to verify your, if it's food, farm to table, or pharmaceuticals, that not a fake product. So it's really important. Hey, I think maybe this is a good time. Right now with every of my podcast guests, I like to do like a rapid round of questions, and where I ask you something and you just tell me what comes into your mind. Does that sound good?
Sure. Go ahead.
Great, sounds good. All right, what's the most exciting technology trend you're following right now?
Well, I mean, we've been hitting on it. I'm just right now involved in AI, and I started out just looking at how does the math work,
Mhm.
and so I've got some understanding of the basically statistics and differential equations, some calculus. I wanted to understand that. Now I can use it more effectively. So that's an exciting area. I can use it to improve my consulting skill. When I go to a client, I think I've got a better proposal and a better deliverable because I've got AI embedded into my thought process. Yeah. My
Right.
website, I think you've skimmed it a little bit. It's going to change in the next 6 months. There's going to be a lot more functionality and capability built into that website.
Nice.
So it's AI, yeah, along with blockchain.
Right.
And there's others, but those are key things.
Yeah, everybody's excited about that. How about a book that has significantly influenced your career?
A book? Early on, I read this book, Dale Carnegie, Winning Friends and Influencing People. I actually took that training also. Very much influenced my career. They teach you how to speak, how to present, and how to turn a negative conversation into a positive conversation. Very instrumental in my life to open up and to interact with people, hopefully provide some leadership in a positive construct. That's been a very influential book for me, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, no, I agree that I read that book too. It's very good. It has a lot of insights about human psychology, right?
Yes.
If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring CTOs, what would it be?
Organization, yeah, and strategy. Understand the strategic need of the business. Understand the business model. Understand the customer. Understand the current capability. Understand the organization. So you've got to have an enterprise perspective as a CTO, and then there's going to be your peers, right? You've got to put some leadership in, and you've got to put some submittals in with your peers. Your peers, CEO, CIO, CDO, VPs in the supply chain, that whole group, you have to organize and work with them to satisfy their needs, because that's what you're there for. You're there to satisfy operational and strategic needs. That's the key thing. You don't have to be, as a CTO, a very deep dive guy in software development, right? You need to understand the plan, how to create a plan, how to monitor the plan. You need to be an organizational person. You need to be a leader, and you need to understand technology for sure on a grand scale at an enterprise level. That would be my advice.
Right. That makes sense. People skills are, something that as you progress through your career, especially if you're very technical, that you need to develop to be successful in a role like that. Quick follow-up question: what do you think about companies hiring a chief AI officer?
The chief, what is it?
Chief AI officer.
Oh, chief AI. I saw that. Yes, I saw that on LinkedIn not too long ago. I thought, yeah, good idea. What's the difference between that? That seems like a piece of it to me, though, to an ambidextrous organization. Right. The ambidextrous organization has to recognize that AI is an opportunity set, and they have to plan for it. They have to track it. They have to look at their competitors, what they're doing, what the vendors are coming out with. That whole thing. It's what I call an ambidextrous organization. But having someone focus on AI, they're going to be spending money. Right. So you can bet they want somebody accountable. Yeah. They want a budget guy. Right. No. But you need to understand AI. Now, if you could bring in one of these guys from, I don't want to name names, out in Silicon Valley, who have built these open source applications, would they help a manufacturing company like Keurig? Maybe. Maybe not. I think that's definitely a trend, a role, but it's one of these areas where you always think about the CIO, then you have a CTO, you have a CDO, you have, split it up in different responsibilities. For small organizations, probably a CIO does a lot of those things, but then for mid-sized to larger organizations, they really need to think about, having a dedicated person, because it seems to me CIO's role being diminished. Yeah. There's just too many things on the plate that one guy, one CIO, even can handle. Right. That role's getting diminished. Right. In one word, how would you describe the future of enterprise technology? Fluid. Flowing. Yeah. Changing, swirling around. Yeah. Who's someone in the tech industry you admire most? Well, I used to look at Microsoft and Oracle, Larry Ellison, those guys, and they just fought it out with each other. The guy I admire is Elon Musk. I can't fathom how. I was just looking at him on YouTube just now. He's got these mobile homes he's building. A $10,000 house. He's got the Boring Company. He's got SpaceX. He's going to come out with an AI application to leapfrog his buddies who built ChatGPT with him, because he's mad because they want to make money out of it. He doesn't believe in that. Yeah. So he's introducing an AI application pretty soon. Right. With something like trillions of what do they call these points? I forget what a point is. So it's like a piece of data or something. Elon Musk is an amazing guy. One thing I would like to learn about him is, can he calculate? Which I bet he can. I bet he can put together a physics model of something like the supply chain or some manufacturing process and write the math. Right. Model. Bet he can do it. As well as have the government or the U.S. asking him to come and help work on initiatives with them. Yeah, actually, that's something when I read about him. That's something that's key to how he operates. For him, everything is an equation. Nothing's impossible, right? And so I think that's what differentiates if you're like a thought-leading innovator, because you believe it can be done if you put your mind to it, right? Which is amazing. The CEO who just recently retired from SAP, was a real visionary as well.
Hmm.
You know, because I worked on early ERP systems. What you had when I was with Digital Equipment Corporation, you had the bill of material and you had purchasing and you had inventory on the backs. And finance was in IBM systems. And data would flow one way. You could put in this gateway and you could either upload it to IBM or a different gateway and you could download it from IBM into the backs.
Yeah.
And so SAP came out with an integrated, fully integrated financial and supply chain system, MRP system.
Right.
You guys admirable also.
Right. Right. It's kind of funny how everything happens in waves. Now we're like, I said, we're looking at a composable and looking again, maybe piping it out somewhere, right? And hopefully it comes back nicely. So that's what companies are figuring out right now. But hey, Doug, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I think your insights were really helpful for leaders that are following this podcast and learning from you. And thank you for sharing your expertise.
Carson, thank you very much. Very, very good conversation. Appreciate the opportunity that we had today.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Bytes of Brilliance, Boardroom Insights. If you enjoyed our conversation with Doug Barry, please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and share it with your network. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue to bring you insights from the brightest minds in the industry. Until then, keep on innovating and optimizing. I'm your host.
Turn it up. It's your new groove, yeah. Riding waves in the digital blue, yeah. CTO time's got that insight, yeah. For the execs in the tech light, yeah. Bridging gaps with every tune, play it. Sync your mind to the tech boom, slay it.